Visit Coron and explore Coron Island in island hopping differently. Coron Island is first and foremost a beautiful island in the Philippines located north of Palawan. It is an island to be explored during a day in island hopping mode, that is to say during a day in a boat trip from island to island from the village of the same name, Coron, which is located here. Just opposite, on the island of Busuanga. Are you still following us? We reassure you right away. The map is a little lower in this travel blog post as well as our story, tips and advice to dream and help you organize your next trip to the Philippines. After Manila, Siargao, Bohol and Pangalao, the south of the island of Negros and finally El Nido and the Bacuit archipelago, our trip to the Philippines is drawing to a close. Before heading to Manila for one last night, we decide to stay 4 days 3 nights in Coron, an essential stopover when traveling to the Philippines. The Coron archipelago is world famous for its diving spots and the many wrecks dating from the Second World War. There is something magical about the island. The gigantic limestone cliffs make the island inaccessible, and yet behind its cliffs lie surprising lakes with crystal clear waters. And all around the island, lagoons and paradisiacal beaches invite contemplation and escape. Coron El Nido, Philippines. In addition to island hopping, if you come to Coron, feel free to rent a scooter and explore Busuanga Island. It is also an opportunity to make great encounters with the locals. Coron, Philippines village children. We will conclude this article by answering the recurring question, if we had to choose between El Nido and Coron, which of these two dream stages would we favor? Visit Coron and explore the jewel of the Philippines differently. After our stopover in El Nido, here we are in Coron. El Nido is often compared to Coron, in particular for the apparent similarity of its landscapes with its spectacular limestone formations that seem to spring from the turquoise seabeds that make divers happy. But unlike El Nido, mass tourism in Coron is not that developed. So if you are planning a trip to the Philippines, this should be noted. Coron is considered one of the most beautiful islands in the world. Coron, Philippines Island Plain View. We start this blog post with our video shot in front of the camera in El Nido on the seaside. We take you aboard the little banker of Krish, a very nice and very professional Filipino, and with whom we were able to live in our pace our island hopping. A good plan already followed by many fans on social networks and many readers of our travel blog since our visit to Coron in February 2017. We had excellent feedback until February 2018, when the Filipino started to develop its activity. How to get to and from Coron. Do not confuse the city of Coron, where travelers stay, located on the island of Busuanga, with the island of Coron which is in front of the city and which one explores during the famous day boat trips. Island hopping, called island hopping. The city of Coron is easily crossed in 10 minutes by scooter. There are still 3 or 4 things to do in the village itself, but Coron is basically the starting point for all activities. The cheapest restaurants, bars, grocery stores and guest houses can be found in central Coron. Going further along the coast, there are mid and high-end hotels and resorts, some of which offer incredible sea views. A few restaurants and bars. We'll talk to you about all of this below. Unlike El Nido, Coron Airport serves several cities in the Philippines. You can reach Manila in 1-hour flight. Rent scooter in Asia. For total autonomy, and if you are curious like us and want to explore the coast, the best solution is to rent a scooter. You can rent one for two. Island hopping in Coron differently. Coron is first and foremost explored on the seaside, while exploring Coron and its surroundings on the land side should not be overlooked. We will talk to you about it further below. When you approach Coron Island by boat, you suddenly have the impression of being in the setting of a movie film like Jurassic Park or King Kong. It is difficult to find the words in the face of so much beauty. The landscapes of Coron are sumptuous, striking, almost unreal. Between lakes and lagoons, this day around the island of Coron will in any case remain one of the most beautiful of this trip to the Philippines. There are several options available to you to explore Coron Island in one day by boat. The 5 classic tours that we tell you about first are the tours that you can find in all the agencies in town. These are also the ones offered by all Coron hotels including ours. Coron Philippines Turquoise Water Rowboat. As a result, tourists find themselves in giant bankers that can accommodate an average of up to 30 passengers. It's too crowded for us who dream of discovering Coron Island and its white sand beaches in peace. So we looked for and found another solution, the local boat. Then we'll talk to you. On the advice of our friend Alexandra from the On My Way blog, we opted for an island tour in a private banker, the typical Philippine boat, with a local called Krish. This young guy in his 30s is really nice, speaks perfect English and adapts to the wishes of his customers. When we told him we wanted to start the tour early to avoid the crowds and explore Coron Island in a different way, he said okay. Banco. Here's how our day of island hopping went and everything we saw. Coron White Sand Beach, Philippines. Our favorite spots in Coron between beaches and lagoons. While preparing for this trip to the Philippines, we noted some desires for spots to see for real. Kayangan Lake, Twin Lagoon, Barracuda, Syke Beach, Banol Beach, Skeleton Wreck or even Green Lagoon, which is only included in Tour A. We can say that the challenge was great. So here's what we saw and how our day of El Nido boat trip went. It is 6:30 a.m. We made an appointment the day before with Krish, a villager who lives in an isolated village of Coron and therefore far from tourists. It is primarily to feed his family that he does this job. Business is tough because all the big agencies sell the same service to tourists, which has created a monopoly that only benefits a few in the end. And since we don't like to be like everyone else, we decided, while having fun, to help a local. Departure is by scooter from our hotel. From our hotel, we cross the village of Coron and arrive in just 10 minutes at the port. In other words, the price is still attractive given the conditions of experience offered if we compare them with conventional tours. You should still plan to pay the entrance fees in addition. We tell you for each stop. Here's everything we saw and did on our island hopping. Once again, we determined the program together, of course following its recommendations, particularly related to the weather. Your experience may therefore be different. Kayangan Lake. What you need to know. After half an hour of navigation, we have arrived in paradise at Kayangan Lagoon. We are the first of the day to disembark. We will stay there for 1 hour. Coron Philippines Island hopping view. There follows a short climb up the stairs for just 5 minutes. Objective: to gain height and enjoy the exceptional panorama on the site. Up there, we even come across a small cave full of shells encrusted in its walls. As you continue to climb a few steps, you find yourself facing a sublime inland lake with crystal clear waters. The landscape is unreal. You can't help but take a dip in a lake that also hides many hot springs within it. Result: we swim in very clear and warm water which surprises the first dive. Despite the captivating beauty of the sight, we still end up going back down after a few minutes. The first tourists are coming. Coron Swim Lake Richard, Philippines. The sun is hiding under the clouds this morning. Krish agrees to our request to return later this afternoon to rediscover the sight under the sun. Coron Lagoon, Philippines. The boat anchors in the middle of a first lagoon. We jump into the water, which isn't that hot there. We then swim until we reach an arch which gives us easy access to a second completely protected lagoon. The amazing thing is that the water is cold on the surface but very hot at the bottom. Philippines seabed freediving. Proof that many underwater hot springs are present here. In any case, the feeling is still weird. We are not in Jurassic Park but it looks like it. It's hard to leave this splendid twin lagoon. Coron Richard Dream Beach. Don't dream, unless you spend a morning like us with Krish. Otherwise you will find this beach crowded at lunchtime because this is where all the tourists boarding the bankers in the morning and doing the classic island tours hopping stop for lunch. Result: hundreds of tourists invaded the beach at the same time. Heaven has to turn into hell for sure. We realize how lucky we are to have met Krish and to follow his good plans. Skeleton wreck site. What you need to know. Here is an unusual stop because this new stage of our personalized island hopping is located a few dozen meters from the coast, exactly in line with the wreck of a Chinese boat that ran aground here 40 years ago. Now is more than ever the time to explore part of this gigantic wreck in snorkeling mode. The site is populated by a large number of tropical fish. We really feel like we are in a giant aquarium. Coron, Philippines snorkeling wreck. A few other bankers populated by Chinese tourists very present in the Philippines arrive as we explore. We won't be staying any longer just to keep our lead in exploring the beauties of Coron Island. Philippines Boat Banker Tower. But it's also a time for both of us and also for Krish and his sailor to take a break and have lunch. The bankers in Coron are always well equipped and allow you to barbecue fish. On our side, we had bought fruit, crisps and cookies for everyone. With a smile, we decide to share everything to the delight of all of us. We discuss our lifestyles and our vision of the world. An hour of exchanges and sharing in all simplicity as we like them in a site shunned by the vast majority of classic tours. Return to Cahuengan. The clock is ticking and it is time to return as planned to Cahuengan Lagoon to enjoy the sight now that the sun has risen. The atmosphere is very different from this morning as many bankers are now parked in the lagoon and many tourists take the famous recently renovated staircase to gain height and enjoy the famous view of Cahuengan Lagoon. We have to admit that we didn't hang around but the spectacle once up under the sun was well worth it. Siete Pescados. What you need to know. Last stop of this day of island hopping with Krish. It is about going snorkeling around 7 rocky islets called Siete Pescados located between Busuanga Island and Coron Island. The setting is sublime. It's right in front of the lighthouse that we discovered on a scooter the day before. We will tell you more about this later in this blog post. Coron Island hopping. Unfortunately, the weather got there and the wind and swell picked up. We will therefore not be able to leave the banker. Krish, in order to protect his boat, decides with his sailor to fold the sails which hitherto protected us from the strong rays of the sun. The day ends in fact under the clouds and a fairly strong wind. Fortunately Krish, who obviously knew the swell was going to rise in the afternoon, had it all figured out. We are indeed only about 10 minutes sailing from the port of the village of Coron, our final destination. Where to eat, where to go out for a drink in Coron. The village of Coron is home to many establishments from the pizzeria to the quintessential Filipino restaurant, without forgetting our HQ, the Coffee Kong Cafe. And we start our selection with this very nice coffee. Coffee Kong in Coron. Drinking instant coffee is the norm in Coron apparently, so if you dream of a freshly brewed cup of coffee, head to Coffee Kong, which is located along the main drag. It's a nice little place with air conditioning and Wi-Fi and has a real espresso machine. We also taste very good cakes. La Sirenetta in Coron. La Sirenetta is a restaurant on the water ideal for dining after sunset. Frequented by many travelers, the establishment is often full. Two possibilities therefore. Either you reserve before or you wait at the central bar, which is very friendly. In addition, the cocktails and the peanuts to accompany them are excellent. The Sirenetta is not very hard to find. Just go to the end of the first jetty to the right of the port. Before concluding on this fabulous trip to the Philippines, finally up to the question that one inevitably asks when preparing for your trip to the Philippines: choose El Nido or Coron. Staying in El Nido or Coron. Once you start researching Palawan, you quickly realize that the majority of travelers will visit mainly two places in the Philippines, Coron and El Nido. You probably tell yourself that you must therefore visit both sites. Unfortunately, you may be running out of time and you have to choose. Indeed, the sea that divides these two places does not make them as easily accessible as one might think. We were already talking about it above in the accessibility section. The 4 to 9 hours of sailing that separate Coron from El Nido will take you 1 day or more if the sea is rough or if the boat is already full, even though you are on the boarding list. We escaped this situation by jumping in the boat without asking anyone, but it was very hot. We obviously don't recommend this method to you, but we really didn't have a choice here. Conclusion of this story: be flexible when traveling to the Philippines, because you are never safe from a flight cancellation or a postponed boat due to bad weather or local organizational issues. So here are for us the strengths and weaknesses of these two destinations, both essential in the Philippines. The strengths and weaknesses of El Nido. The archipelago of El Nido is so much larger than that of Coron. There are therefore many more spots to discover in island hopping. This is what unfortunately attracts mass tourism. And yet the seabed is disappointing in El Nido, but the landscapes are so magnificent. El Nido island hopping. Big lagoon banker. The big downside is that everything is suddenly locked on the touring side, including when you want to escape El Nido on a motorcycle. As for accommodation, they are all overestimated on the price side. We preferred to sleep in a fairly simple establishment located on beautiful Coron Bay rather than in the dusty and overcrowded village of El Nido. In addition, you can easily enjoy many beach bars in the area. El Nido sunset in the Philippines. In conclusion, you have to be very flexible, especially because of transport times and the often unpredictable weather in the Philippines if you want to stay in El Nido. Coron. As you may have read in this blog post, the village of Coron is less touristy than El Nido. The locals also seemed friendlier. And as soon as you move away from the center of Coron, you meet real people right away. During our meetings, we felt that the locals did not meet travelers every day. It really changed us from El Nido. If we compare the value for money between Coron and El Nido, there is no picture. Food is easier to find and cheap accommodation in Coron. Also, Coron is more easily accessible than El Nido by plane from Manila, for example. Coron Sunset Heart Dream Destination Philippines. Our favorite, Lake Kayangan, one of the most famous postcards from the Philippines. Coron has a lot to offer for divers, with its abundant marine life and the opportunity to explore World War II shipwrecks. So what about Coron or El Nido? El Nido or Coron? Now it's up to you to choose between these two must-see destinations in the Philippines. Our preference would rather tend towards Coron because in addition to the beauty of the island-hopping landscapes around the island of Coron, we were very happy to multiply the meetings with the locals on the island of Busuanga. But your choice necessarily depends on what you are looking for, your budget and the season in which you travel. So let us know about your choice, which may help other readers. In conclusion of this stage in Coron and on our trip to the Philippines, an absolutely unforgettable month-long island hopping trip. Coron Island is heaven on earth. So, how not to crack and take the first plane for this dream destination? In addition, if you pass like us by a local banker for your excursion around the island of Coron, you will live a day of highlights in peace. A stay in Coron that we are certainly not ready to forget. Coron Travel Philippines Palawan. So ends our stories from our one-month trip to the Philippines.